This is the single most important thing that you can do to revise and edit faster. If you are looking to save time on your editing process, this is it, y'all. Now, this is straight from the Professional Editor's Playbook. Editors do a lot of things differently. Most of us have different processes, but pretty much every editor does this one thing. If you are not doing this, you are wasting so much time and energy, and trust me, I have been there. It's not a secret, it's not difficult, it is just one simple little thing, and that's editing high to low. All right, take a deep breath. You've made it to the writing woods. It is a beautiful day here in East Tennessee. I'm hanging out with my dog. He's back there causing trouble. I think he already found a femur of some sort, and as always, we are away from the pressures and distractions, and we're just here to talk writing. So a lot of writers dread editing, and it is one of my life missions to help as many writers fall in love with editing as possible, because I was definitely one of those writers that I hated editing. I hate it so much, y'all. I was like, can't my first draft just be perfect and call it a day? Unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. But there are things that you can do to make editing easier, faster, overall less painful, and even fun. I know, it's tough to believe, but editing can actually be fun. Look at me. I went from a writer who absolutely hated editing, dreaded every second of it, to a professional editor who does this for other people as well as myself and enjoys it. Crazy, right? But here we are. So editing high to low, incredibly important. I would say that the two biggest things that you can do to improve the efficiency of your editing process are editing high to low and outlining, planning before writing. And I have a video on deep outlining. Y'all might want to check that out if you are really serious about trimming down that revision and editing process. What does it mean to edit high to low? Because that just sounds like some kind of fashion trend. All it means is that we are starting with the big picture elements, the story level. We're starting with the forest, all right, y'all? And then we're slowly gonna work down throughout our editing process until we're looking at the trees and then the leaves. We start with the big overarching story, and then we move down to the chapters, the scenes, the lines, and prose. If you're talking about professional editing, we structure this pretty rigidly because, you know, when you're charging for something, you kind of have to. We start with something called developmental editing, and then we'll work our way down to line editing and finally proofreading. Developmental editing covers the story level aspects, characterization, structure, plot, setting, all that good stuff. Once we get down to line editing, we're actually looking at the prose sentence by sentence and making line level changes to the prose. So we'll talk about what that looks like for self-editing, because of course it's going to be different. But first, let's look at why it's so important. Rocket, buddy. That was too far, buddy. You can't go that far, okay? Good boy. Okay, come here. Why don't you come here and sit with me? All right, so why don't we just play this through? Let's say that you start with the prose instead of the story. So you start cleaning up every chapter. You start making sure every sentence is perfect, and you spend months on this. Then you start looking at your story as a whole, and you realize that, oops, you messed up. You're gonna completely rewrite a character. A character needs to be totally different in order for the story to work. Now, you're rewriting chapters that you just spent months cleaning up and making perfect. So you just wasted all that time. Now you've got to do the changes to the story. You've got to write those chapters over again. And then you've got to clean them up at the line level again. So the workload for this process just doubled. Whereas if you had started with the story, realized that you need to make those changes, done your cuts, your rewrites, and then you go in and start working on the prose. Of course, that's a lot more efficient, but a lot of the time when we get to the editing process, we're so excited, maybe not for editing, but at least excited to be finished with the manuscript, you know, that we just kind of tackle whatever we see first without stopping to think it through. And it may not even be as dramatic as doing a full line edit, full passes on the prose before touching the story. But it also may not be as efficient as making sure that we've done our best to make all of those high-level, story-level changes before digging into the prose. Because the thing is, we're writers, and we have, even, all of us, non-editors included, have that little editor blood in us. And it's really hard to see something and not fix it. I know, it's tough, but you have to learn to see one thing at a time. You're looking for the forest or the trees. And this is more efficient from the perspective, of course, of not having to redo your own work, but also our brains aren't wired to see both at once. The expression can't see the forest for the trees. That's the way it goes. If you are looking at that low-level, prose-level stuff, you're going to miss the story issues. You're going to miss the forest. So it is a skill to develop to be able to really tune into one or the other. And it requires practice. But having a plan is a really good way to keep yourself on track, to start building that skill, knowing exactly what you're supposed to be looking for in a certain editing pass. So if you start with your first pass and you're looking at the story level elements and you have maybe a list of stuff that you are supposed to be paying attention to, and you see that typo, you see that sentence that could have been phrased better, and you can learn to not put energy into it, to notice and then go, nope, that's not what I'm looking for right now. So let's talk about what this looks like for self-editing, because of course, professional editing is a different beast. We have very specific passes, very specific services. For self-editing, it's not always that cut and dry. So just like writing, there are a million different ways to approach the editing process, but it's generally helpful. Oh my goodness, look at the amount of dog fur on me. Yes, you did that. First of all, we're going to let our manuscript rest. We're going to put it in the drawer, give it some time away from it. That'll help us approach it with fresh eyes. Next, it's usually a good idea to do just a read through. We're going to read the manuscript, kind of take notes, think about what we might need to change, what might need to be addressed, where the problem areas are, what questions you have. This is also a really good time to be working on or updating your story Bible. It can be as simple as a piece of paper with information about each character that you want to make sure you keep consistent throughout the story. All right, so you've done your read through, you've got a bit of a plan. Now you're going to start with revisions. And this is the story level. This is the forest. So you're going to look at the characterization, the structure, the plot, really evaluate everything. What needs to be cut, changed, rewritten? Do scenes need to be added? This can take multiple passes. It probably will take multiple passes. It would be really surprising if you finish your draft and were able to just fix all of the story level elements just like that. That would be impressive for sure. And there is a little bit of working down even within this revision process. So you're really starting out with things that are going to affect the story as a whole, things that might require really broad, sweeping changes to the entire manuscript. And then as that stuff gets cleaned up, you're going to work down till you're kind of evaluating each chapter, each scene. And once you feel like you have addressed all of that stuff, your story is exactly where you want it. That's when you're going to move down to the prose level. And with self-editing, I don't really look at this like I do with professional editing, where we have categories of line editing, proofreading. With self-editing, you kind of naturally flow to proofreading when you have fixed all the other issues. Because once you're at the prose level, you're not sitting there saying, I'm not going to fix the typo because right now I'm thinking about clarity and concision. It is all part of the same process, and you just kind of flow downward naturally at that point. But the most important thing is that by the time you are working on the prose, you have already addressed all of the story level stuff. So your forest is perfect, and now you're looking at the trees. And now, of course, like everything, there has to be some flexibility, because there's always the chance that you get down into line editing and you go, oh, dang it, I should have changed this about the story. And we don't want to sit there and go, I'm not going to change it, I'm not going to fix it because I'm already in line editing. Of course, we're not going to do that. We're going to go back and change it. And if it takes longer because we wind up having to cut something we've already line edited, well, you know, it is what it is. But the important thing is that we are shooting for that ideal. And the closer we can get to the perfect high to low structure, the more efficient our editing process will be. This is not an all or nothing scenario. The better you can do with this, the more efficient you'll be. So if you just go into it with that plan and keep reminding yourself what you are looking for at this specific stage, keep reminding yourself whether you're looking at the trees or the forest, and you will get better and better at it. It is such a learned skill. I'll say even when I started as a professional editor, this was really hard for me. It was extremely hard during a developmental edit to not want to point out every single prose level thing. It was difficult during a line edit to not want to point out the issues that I saw with characterization or plot. And I still do sometimes, especially if it's something that keeps showing up consistently. When I do a developmental edit, I always have a section for common prose level issues. You know, if you're doing the same thing over and over again, I'm going to see it no matter what I'm looking for. And I'm going to go ahead and point that out to you so that you can work on it. But what I have really gotten better at is not ignoring those things per se, but doing a better job of focusing on what I'm supposed to be focusing on. Because chances are, if you're supposed to be looking at the story and you keep getting distracted by the trees, by the low level elements, then you are probably missing issues or nuance with the story. Yes. Do you see this? I got you. He wants belly rubs. Okay, we're gonna take a break to give the husky belly rubs. Yeah. So if you are working on editing efficiently, then working high to low is so important, and just keep practicing, just keep working on it. It's not something that anyone really does intuitively without practicing. And I would say that even if it is, you can still get better at it. And it'll save you so much time and give you more time to write your next book. So if you're editing your book, you're implementing this structure, and you are still feeling frozen, there's another piece you might be missing. Now, professional editors have this inherently, but it's something that writers have to work for. But just like this, it's something that can be learned.